So in 2023, Le Mans celebrated their 100th anniversary. The race started in 1923. There's some years where they didn't race because of war, so it's not the 100th running, but it was 100 years of Le Mans. And obviously, Le Mans wanted to have the most spectacular cars there to celebrate the 100th anniversary. They had a lot of the winners, probably, out of the 80-something winners, they probably had 50 or 60 of the Le Mans winning cars there, which was amazing. The story comes with the museum, the Revs Institute collection. A lot of it came from the Briggs Cunningham collection, when she was one of the best car collectors throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s, a very respected racer as well. So his goal was always to win Le Mans with an American car. And the first time he really put a team together was in 1950. He took a Cadillac Coupe Series 61, a stock car, normal chassis one, just put a bigger fuel tank. But then he had Grumman Aircraft Corporation design this Cadillac Monstre for him, which is a super iconic car. So he goes to Le Mans in 1950 with the first really all-American team. And, they had a great time. They finished 10th and 11th. They had some unfortunate mechanical issues, but this car was celebrated. Actually, when the team arrived there with the Cadillac Coupe, the French actually called it the Le Monstre because of how wicked it looked. And if you know the car, it's a really boxy car. People actually think it's a boat, even though it was designed by an aircraft corporation. And then he could take the coupe. But those cars remained as an icon there in France as the first American team. So people are extremely passionate. They know the car to the extent where they asked for us to send the car for the 100th anniversary, even though it wasn't a winning car, but it was such a special, significant car. Our vice president was actually scheduled to go to Le Mans, and for some reason he couldn't. So guess who's up? Guess who has to do the work? So they asked me, they're like, probably with 2 weeks before Le Mans, or maybe even less, they're like, hey, Pedro, this is happening. Obviously, the gentleman can't make it, so would you be up to go to Le Mans? You don't have to ask me twice. So I get on the plane. I had been to France once through as well as the Revs Institute in 2019, but never to Le Mans. So, I get to the airport, I get the rental car, and I'm driving down to Le Mans, not knowing what to expect. I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought, the car was in the museum. I thought I was just going to be there to take care of the museum, just making sure everything's okay, help with the load, unload. And when we get there, I start meeting all the people, the organizers of Le Mans. They're very thankful of the car being there. And then they tell me that we're actually going to do some exhibition laps. Not one time, but twice on Friday and Saturday. So, it was just an incredible experience being at Le Mans, seeing the cars, the buildings that I had only seen in video games. It was stunning to see that whole legendary track. And then they gave us all this access to the museum. The museum was packed. The line was, the wait to get in there was hours and hours. But us as car owners, we could just walk into the museum at any time. So I just walked to the museum and saw these amazing cars. It was mind-blowing to be able to see that. So then the president of ACO and all of them were like, all right, this is going to happen. This is the schedule. On Friday, we're going to take the car into the infield, do some laps. So what ended up happening, I wasn't prepared to drive. So they loaned me a suit. They loaned me a modern helmet. Obviously, the Cadillac was one of the most special cars there, not because it wasn't a winner, but it was just a significant automobile for the United States participating at Le Mans. The president of the museum, or the curator of the museum, I don't recall exactly who it was, sees the car and he's like, you can't just wear a modern helmet. So they actually take Phil Hill's helmet that was on exhibit, part of the Le Mans exhibit, and they loan it to me so I can look more period correct, which was incredible. It was such a cool experience. So, I'm in this suit with the helmet, and then we take the cars in the infield, and they instructed us to line all the cars up in chronological order on the main straightaway. So we lined them all up just like they did in period. And then actually they asked us to stand across the track, and then the whole crowd started a French countdown, from 10 to 1 or 0. And then we all ran across the racetrack, hopped in the cars, and, and took off. We did probably 4 or 5 laps around Le Mans, which that was unbelievable. As I was driving, I remember, you come out of the main straightaway, you go through the Dunlop curves up the hill, and then, after a few other turns, you go out on the main, most legendary Mulsanne straight, and that was unbelievable. I was following some other pre-war cars, so we were going fairly slow, but just to see the people, the marshals, the road lines, and it's a public road normally, so you're able to see all these legendary markers that are on their European style markers. It was just mind-blowing. There's helicopters flying over us, filming the whole event. And then as I was coming around the racetrack, we did the final lap, I believe. I'm coming around, back down the main straightaway, and they're setting off all these fireworks. And it just happened to be that as I was going with the Le Monstre down the main straightaway, all the fireworks are going right beside me. And we had a GoPro, and I was able to capture just everything. So we did that on Friday, which was unbelievable. So Saturday, they're like, we want to do the same thing in the morning before the start of the race. So we had to get up early in the morning and to get the car in there. And then we did the same thing, which was incredible, being now the track is, crowded with 200, 300,000 people, which was, just to hear the crowd and being part of that whole spectacle was amazing. And because I was a driver, they gave us access to the drivers club, and that was unbelievable, being in there with all these legendary drivers. Charles Leclerc was there, LeBron James was there. He was the one that actually gave the green flag for the start of the race. And then just being part of that whole show. I mean, the 100th anniversary of Le Mans was unreal. So that was, and actually, Ferrari ended up winning that race, and that was the first time Ferrari had won since 1965. So being part of that show, hearing the crowd, the Ferrari, of course, the tifosi, the famous Ferrari crowd, was unbelievable. Just being part of that spectacle, having the Monstre there, being able to drive it with Phil Hill's helmet, it was such an emotional experience. I remember just literally tears of joy coming down my face as I'm driving this legendary car down the Monstre straight, seeing myself on some of the screens. What a spectacular experience that was, being at Le Mans for the 100th anniversary. So the Cadillac Le Monstre, that was actually how I learned to drive the famous 3 on the tree. It's a 1950s Cadillac, so you don't have your normal shifter here. You actually have a 3 on the tree. It's such a big car that you have to be careful with people and where you're going through, because it's such a big car. Also, it has very, very antique drum brakes, and we keep the car as original possible. And for what we do, we don't need to upgrade the brakes or try to improve the car. So the car is a little bit unstable, especially under cold brakes. So when I was going down the Mulsanne straight, it actually happened to Briggs Cunningham during the race on the start. He went down the Mulsanne straight, locked up the brakes, and went straight into the embankment. So I was hoping, that wouldn't happen to me. So I'm driving down the Mulsanne straight and just feeling the car. And, you hit the brakes, and that's typical for any Cunningham car with drum brakes. You hit the brakes, and you don't know what the car is going to do. So, it would go left and right until finally the brakes warmed up a little bit. It's interesting. Briggs Cunningham was very innovative. Actually, the Cadillac Le Mans was one of the first cars to have radio in. So he had all kinds, but he created this speed based on the tachometer. He created this plate that's set on top of the tachometer, and depending where the needle was at for the tach, it would show you it was written on speeds where it was at, so you could see where your speed was at based on the RPM of the engine, and obviously what gear you were in. But it's a massive car. In 1950, the regulation was that you have to use the same engine and same chassis. You could do whatever you want to the body, because Briggs Cunningham actually wanted to race at Le Mans what was called a Fordillac. So it was a Ford chassis and body, but with a Cadillac engine, because the Cadillac engine was the engine in the 1950s. But because of regulations, he couldn't do that. So if he wanted the Cadillac engine, he had to get the big Cadillac chassis. So like I said, he bought 2 of them. One left pretty much stock, just put a bigger fuel tank. And then Grumman Aircraft Corporation designed this car for him. And they thought it was going to be more agile and lighter. But at that time, because of the prices, I think, of some of the fabrication, the car wasn't really as light or as fast. I think it only had about a 10 or 11 mile per hour advantage down the Mulsanne straight. But it's a big boat. You can feel the air resistance. It's very softly sprung. I was saying, they called the one the Le Monstre because it looked incredible. It looked sinister. And then the other coupe, because it's a very softly, body lines, very round, it's very softly sprung. They call it Petit Patade, which means the clumsy puppy. So the Cadillac is still pretty soft. So as you come into turns, the car sways and moves around, and it's very softly sprung. But it's a massive car. So it's very spacious inside of the cabin. You have your lights, you have your horn. Actually, I might have honked the horn too many times just for excitement, but it has a massive almost truck horn that I'm sure Briggs used in period to try to get people out of the way as he was driving. But it was amazing. Like I said, I learned how to drive 3 on the tree in that car, and to be able to do it at Le Mans was absolutely amazing. But what blew my mind was how many people loved and celebrated that car. I think there's 2 or 3 replicas of this car that live in England and in Europe. So that just shows the passion that people have for this car. And I remember as we finished all the exhibition laps, we come through one of the gates to take the cars back into the museum, and the crowd of people was absolutely amazing. They had made a path for us to go, and it was hundreds of people and cheering, and it was just, I get goosebumps just talking about it now, because it was such a fun memory. And that was actually on my birthday weekend, which just made the whole experience even better. And what a way to celebrate a birthday.
This month of VINwiki Car Stories is brought to you by Bridgestone, and the most exciting news out of Bridgestone is the brand new release of their Alenza Prestige tire. The Alenza Prestige Highway tire is for drivers who want a long-lasting, elegant, and comfortable ride without compromising at all on wet weather performance. Amazing tire that features their next generation Enlighten technology, as well as their Quiet Track technology. An in-groove feature designed to reduce tread pattern noise, combined with a wide center rib that helps to deliver deliver a whisper-quiet ride with comfortable and responsive handling. So check them out now at the link in the description below to learn more about the Alenza Prestige tires from Bridgestone and the entire Bridgestone family of products.